Hey everyone, welcome. We are in Genesis chapter 37. Genesis chapter 37. Kids have continued, things get passed on when you have a big family from one person to the next. So I feel stuffy, but otherwise my body feels pretty good. So please excuse the voice. But I'll try to be as crystal clear here as we look at the first 11 verses in Genesis chapter 37. We are now switching to Jacob's son, Joseph. And the main emphasis for the remainder of Genesis seems to be upon Joseph and God's use of his position, of his life, his calling, and his purpose going forward. So, Jacob, this is verse 1. Jacob lived in the land where his father had stayed, the land of Canaan. This is an account of Jacob's family line. Joseph, a young man of 17. Now, Joseph was not the youngest. The youngest was Benjamin, but Joseph was one of the last born. So all his brothers would have been probably within 7 years, older than he. They were all roughly around the same age because Jacob married his two wives at the same time, and then the two concubines or maidservants of his two wives, 4 women, within 7 years produced all the boys, all 12 children, sons. Okay, so Joseph is 17. Some time has passed, and the first issue that we read about 3 things essentially that take place. It says, He brought his father a bad report. He was out tending the flocks with his brothers, the sons of Bilhah and the sons of Zilpah, his father's wives, and he brought their father a bad report about his step brothers. Okay, that's the first thing. Verse 3. Now Israel loved Joseph more than any of his other sons in his old age, and he gifted him an ornate robe. They say the robe of many colors. And when his brothers saw that their father loved him more than any of the others, they could not speak a word to him. Now, if we were to skip down to verse 11, we see that was because of jealousy. So now we see this is the second issue, is favoritism. And in verse 5, Joseph had a dream, and when he told it to his brothers, they hated him all the more. He said, "Listen to my dream. We were binding sheaves of grain out in the field when suddenly my sheaf rose and stood upright, while your sheaves gathered around mine and bowed down to it." And his brother said to him, "Do you intend to reign over us? Will you actually rule us?" And they hated him all the more because of his dream and what he had said. And if that were not bad enough, he has a second dream. And again, he shares that with his brothers about the stars bowing down to him, including the sun and the moon, perhaps a reference to his father and mother, bowing down to him. Now, his father sort of rebuked him, but kept this in his heart and just kind of pondered it. Maybe there's a special calling over my son, my favorite son, and God's hand is on him for the future. All right, so 3 things that stood out. Number 1, Joseph is 17. He lacks wisdom. Maybe we can learn 3 lessons here. Number 1, first one, we don't know what this bad report is. It was shared to the father. I'm not sure what reason, because Jacob typically did not discipline his children. So Joseph shares this bad report about his stepbrothers. And the first thing that comes to mind is this created animosity, it created resentment, because you basically get me in trouble, Immediately it's perceived as an attack, and it's going to create separation. It's going to create resentment. It's going to create the desire for revenge. Could Joseph have taken a different approach? Of course, we don't know. I mean, we know later on in the story, Joseph is a man of integrity. Was it something immoral? Was it something morally wrong? And we don't know what approach Joseph took. But let's assume for a moment that instead of confronting his brothers directly, and trying to fix the situation directly, he runs and tells his father, okay? Could he have exercised wisdom in going directly to his brothers and say, hey, this is wrong, I don't recommend it? As an individual of integrity, perhaps he could have taken a different approach, a wiser approach. Now, the second thing is we see favoritism. Favoritism never works out well in a family. I can't think of any example in the Bible where favoritism is a positive thing. Always creates jealousy, always creates resentment, bitterness, desire for, to get even or for success in the lives of other kids. It's kind of a competitive mentality in the household because of the prioritization of one child over another. Don't do it. Now, knowing what we know, if we were in Joseph's shoes, we're given this special robe. He could have perhaps wisely built up his brothers by humbling himself, not degrading, not necessarily, maybe taking a humble approach to say, hey guys, dad gave me this, but it's nothing special. Perhaps he didn't even have to wear it all the time. He could have hung it up in his tent and not paraded it around everywhere. He could have said, hey guys, you guys, I may have one or good positive characteristics about me, but you guys are so good at this. He could have built up his brothers. He could have took the focus off of himself and built up those around him, encouraged them. Rather, he received the attention, and it's almost as if he wore this all the time, everywhere, as a reminder that he was the best. He was the favorite. And again, it produced resentment. So could he have taken a different approach to eliminate jealousy in the life of... Now, this happens elsewhere in the Bible. I can't remember the exact passage. Gosh, what tribe was it? It was one of the tribes that won a great victory, and the other tribes got together and were angry about to fight him. And like, hey, God just did this one little thing for us. What are we? You guys are much better, bigger tribe than we are. You got all of this, and they start listing all of these benefits, all these blessings that God had put on these bigger tribes. And it assuaged the anger and jealousy of these larger tribes. They said, okay, well, that makes sense. Yeah, that's true. Yep. It made them feel better, and they walked away. And it de-escalated the fight. That just came to me, and I don't even remember where it is. I would assume it's probably in the book of Judges. Third thing, of course, he has this dream. Now, just because God gives him two dreams, attempting to communicate the same basic premise, doesn't mean that everything that God gives you doesn't mean you should share it with other people. Sometimes you feel the need to share. Again, he's 17. I think he lacked wisdom. And he shares these two dreams, which essentially elevate himself in the eyes of his brothers. Again, unwise, especially in light of everything that had taken place up to this point. Could Joseph, in wisdom, have eliminated any negative feelings between he and the boys if he would have taken a wise approach on these three occasions? I would have said yes. If he would have approached his brothers about the immoral act, whatever it may have been, rather than go directly to his father, again, I'm just speculating, perhaps he could have taken a wiser approach to handle it directly, and let him know, this is where I stand, this is right, this is wrong. And that would have assuaged the situation. Could he have hung this robe up in his room, maybe worn it on a special occasion every now and then, but really took the lowest? Remember how Jesus says, when you come to a banquet, don't take the highest position, take the lowest position that you might be elevated. If Joseph always took the lowest position and elevated his brothers, they would not have nearly been as jealous and resentful of him as they were, because he was always putting them first. Each one of these issues is Joseph putting himself first. He's thinking of himself. He's in charge. He shares a bad report with the father. It's all about what Joseph thinks and what Joseph does, rather than building up and prioritizing his stepbrothers, again with the coat, and then again with the dreams. It's all about him. So I think that his brothers interpreted this pride in Joseph. And again, we may be able to excuse him because he was 17, but he certainly lacked wisdom. There was this self-centeredness. There was this, whether it was genuine or just mistaken because of his age, there's this self-centeredness. There's this focus on self. And it really built up resentment in the life of those closest to him. So what can we learn? I would say, even when we are blessed, don't draw attention to it. Build up other people. He could have taken the coat off and said, hey, you should try this on. You deserve this coat. You deserve this. You're much better than I am. Look at all the giftings and skills and abilities. I admire you guys. You guys are amazing. You're the best brothers. Here, wear my coat. I want to share it with you. He could have shared it. He could have put it away in his trunk and only taken it out on special occasions, or at least let it blow over for a while till the older brothers had forgotten about it. Could have been just like a memorial he hangs up on the wall. So he could have taken a different approach to eliminate this hostility, this negativity. And of course, with his dream, he didn't have to share that. Why would he share that? That's specifically for him from God. He could have journaled it. He could have. Sometimes it's not wise to share with those closest with us. He could have found maybe his father secretly, or someone that he trusted. Share that. Godly, mature man, woman of God. Hey, this is what God revealed. What do you think? All right, he didn't have to make that public and open because it sealed his fate. And we're going to see, as this passage continues, that his brothers desire revenge. And from a naturalistic, humanistic perspective, it's justified. Because he attacks him once with a bad report. He attacks him twice by saying, I'm better than you. Dad loves me more than you guys. I'm better. That's a second attack. Third attack, you guys are going to serve me. I'm going to rule over you. Third attack. 3 strikes, you're out. So we're going to see this harboring of bitterness and resentment. Now, I'm not saying that I'm not excusing this because it's sin. Bitterness, resentment, harboring negativity, desire for revenge. Jesus says, don't take revenge. Pray for your enemies. So they harbor this and they're going to get even. And basically, Joseph has it coming because of his lack of wisdom and because of the decisions he's made. He could have smoothed things over, but he made the wrong decisions. Now God's still going to use it. God's ultimately in control. And I think the Lord is going to teach him and humble him tremendously in the years to come. And Joseph now is going to have to deal with resentment, bitterness, and this desire for revenge. And later on, we see in Genesis that he handles this temptation well. And he's able to pass this test. He's able to pass the test that his brothers were unable to do. Later on, when he has the means to get even and to take revenge. And it can just keep spiraling back and forth. It's like, my sister took something from my room. And you go and take something from your sister's room. And she comes and takes something from your room. And they just go back and forth. It just spirals out of control because it's just walking according to the principles of the enemy. How can we walk in accordance with the principles of God? Build other people up. Take the focus off yourself. Do not harbor bitterness, revenge, hatred, anger, that spirit of murder, which was in the boy's heart. We've got to let that go. We've got to love our enemies even. Seek to become friends with all people. Seek to love your neighbor as yourself. All right, so we'll stop there. Verse 11. We'll pick up verse 12 next time. Okay? God bless.